Hi everybody, I'm Bill Sanders and this is Watch Art Side, the art and science of watch collection. Today what I want to talk about are tonneau watches. And a tonneau watch is basically sort of a oblong, rectangular shape kind of watch. There are a lot of different kinds. And most companies, not all of them, but most companies have at least one tonneau. I think Rolex used to have one called the Prince. I don't think they have anymore. I'm not sure about some of the other ones, but anyway, the other thing I want to talk about, in addition to tonneau watches, are the shapes. Now, this is my Parmigiani Colpa, and as you can see in the back, it has a round movement. And this is the difference between that watch and this watch. My Moser Henry Double Hairspring has a movement that's the same shape as a watch. There are a lot of different kinds of shapes that a tonneau have. This one is sort of a Romulus or something like that. I'm not sure what it is exactly, but it's sort of a rectangular shape as opposed to a round shape. Now, one of the watches that some time ago I ran into was an RGM caliber 20, and I was really impressed with that watch because Roland Murphy, the guy who is the RM and the RGM, he runs it. He had taken a number of different things and that were American sort of traditional watchmaking, put it together into a really good-looking watch that had the shape of the watch and the shape of the movement were meshed together. He used some things from, I think, some of the ideas from Hamilton and some of the other old American watch companies, included this thing called the motor barrel. So I always liked this watch. I thought, well, that's a neat watch. Maybe I'll have that something like that someday. Now, some of the other tonneaus that I've really liked for years. I've been a big fan of the Patek Philippe Gondola series, and in particular, there was a series. I think it was called 524. I think this is it. And anyway, in this series is sort of an Art Deco look to it. But the thing about it was that the ones that were just a little older had the round movement in it instead of the one that was begin to approximate the shape of the case of the watch itself. So why do you say, well, so what? What's the big deal about that? Well, the big deal is that the more movement you can get into a watch, the better. You can get just more clutches, more everything, or bigger ones. They're not only are they easier to work on, but they also have a lot of advantages. Just take, for example, the 7-day wind. That's very difficult in a littler watch like this. This one, on the other hand, you can get a much bigger spring in there and do more with it. If it's in the shape of the watch itself, you can get more. Now you can see here with my Colpa, this was the first version of Colpa that they had, how much space is, quote, wasted because the shape is round, and so all of those corners are unused. And you compare that with this Patek Philippe, boy, they use every bit of it. All right, so this was something that I've always sort of liked. Now, I did get my H. Moser Henry Double Hairspring, and that's the only true tonneau with the tonneau-shaped movement that I have. I like it very much, but there are a lot of other ones. This one I found, I liked it, and it's called the LUC Heritage Grand Cru by Chopard. And it has a caliber LUC 97.01-L1. Now, the thing about this that I found out, is that this thing is in, I think it's either platinum or white gold. And it's really expensive. It's like $42,000. But I went online and at Chrono 24, I found they weren't exactly the same watch, but they were the LUC series, which if you're getting a Chopard, I think you want to look for. Those are all of your in-house ones. And they had ones similar to this one, to this Chopard, except instead of 42,000, they were really well priced. I think a new one was like 10,000, and then of course used ones. They had some used ones for about 4, 5, 6, somewhere in that neighborhood. Okay, let's go on and see some more tonneau shapes. This one is a classic, and it was designed as a sports watch originally, and the Reverso was to flip it over, then it'd be solid steel on the other side. This Night and Day was one I saw recently, and I really liked it. And you can see how the movement, while not exactly fitting the case, still has that longer and angled movement that is for that case. And it's got that great big, looks like a #1 wheel right in the middle of the movement by Jaeger-LeCoultre. Here's the one that I'm wearing now. This is my H. Moser, and as you can see, that they use every bit of it. And you can see this wheel up here is, I'm not sure what it's which one it's for, it goes beyond the where you can see the edge of the case. And so again, like I say, these things really make good use of the space that they have. Now, recently I ran into this watch, and I saw it, and it's by RGM, and it's a William, part of what they call their the William Penn collection, and it's a 121M, and the movement caliber is RGM / Jacquet 736. Well, when you see the name Jacquet associated with a watch, it is automatically interesting. The namesake for Jacquet, the director was a guy named Jean-Pierre Jacquet, and he was the director of Jacquet SA. And Jacquet SA was an assembly company. They made movements from different parts, and they'd put them all together. And the interesting thing about this one was that they put it together in the shape of a tonneau shape. Well, I hadn't seen it before, or if I saw it, I didn't recognize it as such. And looking at it, it's, pretty standard. It's a good-looking one. The watch itself is gorgeous, and this is their stainless steel model. It's a real honey of a watch. And so I thought, well, I want to find out more about that. Now, what happened was Jacquet SA, he had to go to jail. Okay. What had happened was sort of interesting. They had they changed the name from Jacquet SA to, let me see, what did they change it to here? They changed it to Les Jeux Perret. All right, so if you see Les Jeux Perret, it's the people who got sort of left with this. I'll talk about what happened to Jean-Pierre in a bit, but let's take a look at some of these, this caliber, we'll call it caliber 736. It has a lot of different names to it, but essentially it comes out of his shop, and I was looking at this, and so I thought, well, let's see if I can find some more movements that are the same. Well, here's another one by Dunhill. Dunhill had one with, again, you can see it. It's that same movement. One of the other things about this movement that I like, it has a bridge over the escapement, or probably called an escapement bridge. It looks like the wings, the pilot wings that the RAF used to have. They sort of drooping downwards, or Batman wing, sort of a neat one. So this Dunhill was one, had the same movement. So I kept looking, and of all of the ones that I found that surprised me was Jaeger-LeCoultre. And this was the Jaeger-LeCoultre just a few years before they were acquired by Swatch. And they had one, and as you can see, now this is sort of interesting, because this is a good-sized watch, and the reason you can tell it's a good-sized watch was that they had the same movement in it. Now they did a lot of work on it, and they called it the JD 763.X, and they had some different versions. But here again, you see the same movement. This is one that I've had an interest in the tonneau-shaped for a long time, but not only did I not know about this movement, I didn't realize how many watches had it. Baume and Moser, the Hampton small seconds. This also has that same movement in it, and again, it's easy to spot. You can see the Batman bridge over the escapement, and then you can see how the winding wheel and the barrel are right there for the top. I mean, it's a very easy movement to spot a mile away. Another company that surprised me, and they have a wonderful name for it, is the Concorde. It's called the Concorde Delirium. I don't know what's delirious about this one, but again, here you have the same movement. I don't know how I keep finding this thing again and again and again. Okay, moving right along. This was one I found, and I thought, wow, this is a really gorgeous watch. It's a Dubois 1785 Reserve de Marche, power reserve indicator. Not only that, but it also has moon phase on it. So this is a pretty cool watch. And again, this too had the same kind of movement. Well, in one of the articles that I read, the Jean-Pierre Jacquet, before he had to go to the big house, used to buy the iboshes from ETA. In fact, he was very upset with ETA because this is right around 2002, 2003, when they first announced they were thinking of limiting or cutting off the supply of their movement parts to everybody else, their iboshes. And that was their whole business. That was the business of Jacquet S.A., was to take these iboshes and do something with them. Now, for the most part, they could take the iboche and pop it into a circular movement and ship it out the door. But what they did with this particular one, this is a Unitas 6498 that they took apart, and well, they just had the iboshes, and so it was already apart. The iboche comes with everything that you need for the movement, except for the escapement. And and then you get those separately, I guess, from the iboche. Well, when I first saw that, I thought, well, that doesn't look quite right. But the more I looked at it, I said, yeah, with a few modifications, they simply swung the balance wheel down to the bottom there, and the one of the things that sort of worried me was if you look at the little wheel, it's a winding wheel. If you look at the crown and then right down from the crown, you'll see the screw has two screws in it instead of one. And if you look at the 6498, it just has one screw in the middle. So I thought, well, maybe it's not the 6498 that they took. So I started looking up, and I found, if you go back far enough, I found, well, yeah, the early 6498s did have the two screws. By the way, too, why would you have two screws in a winding wheel? Well, you're turning this thing with the stem through the crown, and then a pinion gear and some other gears so that you can wind it. So that thing, you don't want that to slip, and it's a little wheel versus the big wheel. That's probably why they ended up with those 2 screws instead of 1. So to me, this was sort of an interesting, sort of a fun thing. To me, the most fun thing you can do with a watch is to find out more about it. And this particular one, this is one I don't want to get the watch. I want to get the movement. I want to find a watch with that movement in it. And there's some out there, and it's sort of a lot of fun to dig them up. The Dunhill looks pretty cool. So I don't know. I'll see what I can find. All right. So what about Jacquet? It was called the Jacquet affair. It was also called the Ulysse affair as well. And what happened was that 3 guys, Jacquet, a guy who was an employee at Ulysse Nardin, and a guy from, wasn't Minerva, but it was another watch company. Somebody had stole all of these gold cases, and I mean a lot of gold cases, and what they were doing, they weren't making their own watches, but they were making knockoffs of Rolexes and selling those as real Rolexes. And they were using the assembly facilities in Jacques SA. And that's how come Jean-Pierre had to go away, and they renamed the company. One of the other companies that, and this was with Jacques Droz, was that there's a company called Jacques and Baume, Baume. And I think, oh boy, I wonder who's running that company now. And it was a woman whose last name is Jacques, and I've always wondered, well, maybe they're related. The Baume part of it is that apparently Baume and Mercier were very, they really liked to use that movement, and they did a lot of work on it themselves. So anyway, that's my tonneau and movement story. I'd like to get your opinion on it, what you think about those kinds of things, and some of the stuff that is going on in the watchmaking world. And like I said, this is something. Now, doesn't qualify as high horology or anything like that, but it sure is fun. I mean, finding a movement that I never knew existed, and not only that, but found it in so many different watches. It was a lot of fun. Okay, as always, I'd really like to hear your opinion about tonneaus, and if you have one or thinking of getting one ever. And as always, this is an invitation to subscribe if you like. So until Sunday, when we just another incredible watch collection we have for a review on Sunday for you. Hope to see you then. This is Bill Sanders for Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection.